Hey all, another van project. We are swapping out this big bulky third brake light for a stealthy third brake light. The van's a 95, so it has a third brake light because they were required, but it has this really ugly thing grafted on up here that has to stick out a whole bunch in order to be visible over the drip rail. And the other big problem with it is, as you can see, it doesn't actually seal properly to the roof anymore. So I'm getting water, like basically as you drive along, the water gets forced along right down in here, right inside the van. So I literally have wetness on both sides of the van down here on a regular basis because of the water coming in through here. So it's ugly, it leaks, I hate it, but I don't want to take out the third brake light because of all the changes to car safety in the last few decades, this has probably saved the most lives. So what I've decided to do is go with a stealth third brake light setup, because I've been thinking about various options, trying to replace this with different stuff, and every time I came into the same problem, which is in order for a low car to see this over the roof rail or this drip rail, it would have to stick out as far as this or be mounted to the outside edge of the drip rail, neither of which was going to be a really good option. And then while I was hunting for stuff, I found these little tiny LEDs that are hyper bright. These are designed to go on the backs of motorcycles and basically be their third brake light. Or just brake light, I guess. Motorcycles don't have a third brake light. These have a running light and a brake light. I'm only going to be using the brake light circuit on them, but they're super, super bright. I bought a couple of them, and my plan is I'm basically going to mount in the sort of lee of the window. I'm going to mount one here and one here. And there'll be this little tiny button. They'll be pretty subtle, almost invisible in general. You know, there'll be these two little dots, but they'll be nice and bright. They'll be centered like they're supposed to, and they'll function perfectly as a third brake light. They'll actually work better here than that one does because it'll be down where people expect to see a third brake light, because most cars are at the base of the window, not at the top of the roof. So this is going to work really well. All I have to do is drill two very small holes and then run the wiring through both doors. On this door, it won't be any issue because I could run it alongside this existing wire for the door lock solenoid. This door does not have any power run to it, so I'm going to have to drill a corresponding set of holes into this door to run the power into this one. And then I'm going to go up to this light up here and basically rob the wiring out of it to connect to my new wiring, because this won't need to be there anymore. And then once I've got the new ones working, I'm going to take this light out and weld up the hole in the roof so that it'll look like it never had it there. And that'll further my efforts to backdate the van to look like an earlier van. There's my two little holes for them. I don't know how it was, but I basically, in order to have the same location on both, I traced this straight out, I traced this straight out, and then I just arbitrarily decided to measure in 1 inch on both, draw a line between those, measure that, which ended up being 1 3/8 inches, and then took half of that, which is 5 1/2 or however many 16ths, and took that as my reference point, and then punched a hole on both, drilled it out, and then used a little bit of Rust-Oleum, just touch it up. And then over here, there was a divot here and a divot here to tell you where a corresponding spot is, because there's a hole on the inner structure that you can see my finger waving through. So I drilled those two out to be able to now have a place to run the wire between here. These holes are smaller than the one on the other side, but that's fine. It's going to have, you know, one small wire run through it. I am going to get some grommets to go in here, but that I'm not going to do right away. But anyway, they're going to get grommets later. But that means now I can run the wire into this door. So I'm going to leave that for a little bit to let the paint set up a bit, and then I'll get back into it. Alright, my partner's welding in the background if you hear popping noises. So I attached the wires on these and extended it. I used 18 gauge, which is way bigger than it needs to be, but it's what I have a bunch of. And then just for simplicity, I put little bits of tape to sort of keep it together. And then they were run starting from up here, which is where they're going to connect the stock wiring. Comes down, this is it right here, it goes through the hole over here where the original wiring does, comes down, it's going to get secured behind here, but it comes out the hole in the thing, goes into the door, and runs over here. And I'm going to, especially on this side, this one's going to get zip tied up here, or I'm going to stick one of those little adhesive squares that you can zip tie to a wire to, just to make sure I keep it out of the lock mechanism. And then same thing on this side, runs up, runs down through my new holes, through here, and it's going to run up into there. So to finish the door side install, I basically just have to install the little ferrules, which the lighting is terrible, but have their own little gaskets on them, so they should be just fine. I just need to find an appropriate socket for this. I'm probably going to put the tiniest little dot of blue Loctite on them, just sort of to worry about them vibrating loose. But those are going to go in, and then the LEDs just basically socket into the back of them. And then once that's all installed, then I can go about wiring them up, because I didn't want to cut the existing third brake light wiring until I had the new one ready to get connected to it. The nice thing with this kit, I'm going to put the link to the place I bought these from. I don't remember their name. It's some weird name. But they send you a spare third LED, which I thought was really great, so that if you screw one up or if one burns out, you've got a spare. So I will catch up with you as soon as I've got those in and the LEDs in them. And there they are installed. They're barely visible. I mean, you can see how quickly they become pretty much impossible to see. So they're in, the LEDs are in them, so the next step is going to be to wire them up, but it has gotten dark and very cold and windy, so I'm going to do that next day. I'm going to take this off, get some wiring done. And that's it. Black to black, red to white. I specifically did this, I cut the connector off the end of the light so that I could wire it in on this side, so this means I'm not cutting up the factory harness. Not that it's a big deal, but I like to do that when it's possible, just for cleanliness' sake. So theoretically, you can unclip all of my work and still have the factory harness intact. So I'm going to test this, make sure that the LEDs light up properly. So there we go. They work perfectly. You can see they're as bright as the factory lights. So it's going to work perfectly as third brake lights. The size of them is not so much important as the brightness. So yeah. Next day of the third brake light project, and I've got to get rid of these holes in the roof. This is what was under the old upper third brake light, and obviously I don't want them here anymore. So I'm going to weld this up. I think I'm going to end up making 3 patches, though I'm not 100% sure. It may end up just being easier to make one patch and cut all this out and just put a new patch in that way. But I'm going to start futzing with it. I backed the van up, parked closer to the garage, and actually screwed myself because I'm now so close I can't get my head there. So I've got to actually move it forward a little, and then I'm going to put this on time lapse while I try and figure out what I'm doing and get this in here. All the wiring's been pulled out and is hanging down here so that it's not up where it's going to catch fire. So there right now is nothing but metal under this, so I don't have to worry about setting anything inside the van on fire as a result of my current activities. But once I get this welded up, then all the stuff related to the roof of the van is done, which means that the ceiling can start going in. Alright, there we go. Welded up. Not super great work. Got a lot more warp into here than I really wanted to. This whole area is now definitely misshapen. But the holes are sealed, and I can fix that with some filler. You saw me grind over here. That was to put the grounding lug on, because there's no other place to put it. This is a spot I'd previously ground off a little bit of surface rust. I'm going to put some paint on it. I'm going to put some paint on this. I'm going to put a second coat on all the other stuff on the roof. And then I can pretty much call this project done. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.